Okay, welcome to week 12 of the Course in Miracles study group. For those of y'all joining on the replay, we're on chapter 2, the very last segment in chapter 2 called The Meaning of the Last Judgment. Um, I'll put the link down below. There's a free online version you can read along to, and I think you would just click text chapter 2, and then you would go to the meaning of the Last Judgment. And we'll start on paragraph 1. If this is your first time watching one of these recordings for some reason and it just popped up on your feed, you can go to the very beginning and read the introduction. It's just like a small little snippet that goes over the idea of the course. Yeah, and you can pause and read that if you'd like. But we're going to get started. We just are going to take turns reading paragraphs and going back and forth and just discussing our interpretations of each paragraph. And if you have any commentation that you'd like to, chime in on, you can always leave a comment down below. Yeah, I like reading the comments on these. So, okay. I can read the first paragraph. One of the ways in which you can correct the magic miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create yourself. You are apt to forget this when you become egocentric, and this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. Your will to create was given you by your creator, who is expressing the same will in his creation. Since creative ability rests in the mind, everything you create is necessarily a matter of will. It also follows that whatever you alone make is real in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. This basic distinction leads directly into the real meaning of the Last Judgment. So I read this paragraph before coming on just to sit with it a little bit longer. I've been enjoying doing that. It's been helping me warm up to the language. And I did have to look up because the Course in Miracles uses the word magic a lot. And it's been very confusing to me. So I had to look up, like, what does A Course in Miracles mean when it uses the word magic? And the way that this book is using the word magic is to describe when we try to use our ego to go out into the physical world and manipulate the tangible reality rather than aligning ourselves with the will of God, therefore creating miracles. So that helped me make a lot more sense of what this means. Um, Magic, miracle, confusion. One of the ways to correct the magical miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create ourselves. So that helps me to understand that, like, we were created by our creator in the image of our creator. So we can create our own creations, but we did not create ourselves. And whenever we try to use our ego to create something, we're just manipulating reality, and it's not rooted in truth. It's not rooted in sovereignty or peace or love. It's rooted in fear and separation. And so, because it's not rooted in truth, where does it say? It also follows that whatever you alone make is real in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. This helps me to understand more, like, the chaos of this world. And I understand how a lot of people, like, I didn't believe in God for a long time because I just couldn't understand, like, how could the world be like this if a God exists? Like, I believed that for a very long time. And this helps me to more clearly understand that it's because this world was created by our ego. Like, God doesn't see this, can't even perceive this world because it's not rooted in truth. like the Father aspect of God, the aspect that stayed in heaven to uphold the pillars of truth and oneness and unity, cannot even perceive of separation. So it's like this world doesn't even exist. It's like we're having a nightmare laying beside God, to use that visualization. And he's just like, oh my God, they look like they're having a horrible time. What's going on? He can't see our nightmare, you know? Did you have anything to add?
Not really anything to add. I do like that you looked up that magic part because that was like the very first question I was going to have is like, what does that mean in the context of this book? And I'm kind of, I don't know, the meaning of the Last Judgment. I guess I don't really have a perspective on what that means. I didn't grow up religious, so I don't know, like, I don't really know a lot about religion. Like I've picked up things here and there, but yeah, I don't. This is going to be interesting because I feel like I'm totally learning something new.
Me too. I don't have like a religious background with the understanding of the Last Judgment either. So, but I think that's kind of, we offer a more like a fresh perspective.
Yeah, I think it's helpful because
Yeah.
it's like, you can really tell a difference when you're like talking with people who grew up very religious and then, are like either coming out of it or like having a faith crisis. There's a lot there that if it's like solidified into you when you're young, but I think like not having that, like I feel like I'm a little bit more open to like, okay, I can see what's going on here. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'll just go on to number two. We'll just roll with it.
I love it.
The Last Judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. Just as the separation occurred over millions of years, the Last Judgment will extend over a similarly long period and perhaps an even longer one. Its length can, however, be greatly shortened by miracles, the device for shortening but not abolishing time. If a sufficient number become truly miracle-minded, this shortening process can be virtually immeasurable. It is essential, however, that you free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. So, what I'm going to assume is going on here is that the idea of the Last Judgment is like, I mean, is just my assumption from like what I see people talking about. I'm assuming it's like now-ish. And that us coming into like the miracle mindedness is what is like moving through that. But I don't know. I still don't really fully understand this one just because I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Um, from my understanding, like, how do I want to say it? The Last Judgment to me is kind of like when we finally wake up and choose unity. Like it's the last judgment. It's the last time we ever view the world through judgment. And then like almost like in a holy instant, our entire perception is corrected. So we're doing all of this work. And then that's where it says like its length, however, can be greatly shortened by miracles. The device for shortening miracles, but not abolishing time. So it's like how we were talking about last time, depending on like how stubborn we are with like holding on to our attachments, depends on like how much time it takes to receive the miraculous. Um, and so I guess it'll be different for everybody, just depending on like the stubbornness of us individually to release our judgments and to release our separate mind or to surrender our separate mind, however it works. Yeah, the last judgment to me is just like in an instant, all the judgment is gone and we see everything for how it's truly should be perceived in unity.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. Because after I said that, I was like, I think it might be going on nowish. But then I was like, well, I feel like people in like probably the 1800s maybe thought that they were in the Last Judgment, like so that's why I just like I can't grasp that part. But when you were saying that, it made me think of because the way to tell like a lot of us are very critical of ourselves. And the way to tell if you are like super critical of yourself and like still in judgment is if you find yourself like judging other people. And so when you were saying that, like the last judgment, I was like it clicked, like, okay, the last judgment is when you really find yourself like no longer judging yourself, other people, all of that. Because like the inner critic is just as loud as like the outer critic, I guess.
That's so true. Yeah, and it just causes like I've been in this place of contemplating judgment for like years now and like what to do with it. Like, and for a while I would almost like berate myself for judging, like, "Oh, that is so not spiritual of you." And I would like, tear myself down for falling into judgment. And the more I did that, the longer the judgments stayed. It was almost like through my judgment of my judging, I judged more because I was like solidifying it into reality with my own judgment. Whereas the deeper I just surrender and like I've been really into these past few weeks, like just deeply surrendering into my own darkness and allowing my heart to crack open to the pain. And I'm not saying that I don't know everything, but for me personally, I feel like I've had like a really major breakthrough these past few weeks of like, okay, I get it. I'm not criticizing myself or shaming myself for judging. I'm not lashing out to the judgment. I'm literally just like facing the judgment with an open heart, even if it feels like it's cracking me open, and I'm just allowing it to crack me open and I'm surrendering to it. That it's almost like when I allow it to swallow me whole, I step deeper into wholeness. I don't know. This is something I'm going through currently, so it's just kind of a random tangent, but
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Because it's like I will, if I'm like scrolling through YouTube and on the the for you, whatever you want to call it. But if I see a video that pops up and I immediately have a judgment about it, I'll be like, ugh, like annoying. And then I'll go to click like not interested. And then I'm like, wait. Like maybe I should watch that. And honestly, those ones that I judge the most, if I go and actually watch it, then there's totally something in there that I needed to see. So it's like when you can catch those little judgments and be like, okay, these are happening, but it's like, what is my reaction to that? Because I can just so easily just be like, ew, annoying, and like get rid of it. But sometimes it's like that siren that's like, pay attention, pay attention.
yeah, I love that. That's such a great idea. It's almost like
Yeah. It's like,
choosing to immerse yourself into what you already know is triggering you. to just face it head on.
Hmm. And then when I look at like the dumb judgments that I make too, it's like, why am I even making that judgment? Like I'll be like, oh, that person's stupid, or like this thing is dumb, or whatever, like just so like holier than thou judgments. And so it's like, okay, like what am I really thinking about myself? And if these are my thoughts. So yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, I'm gonna go to paragraph 3. The last judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment. However much you may think that punishment is deserved, punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness, and the aim of the Last Judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. After this, the ability to choose can be directed rationally. Until this distinction is made, however, the vacillations between free and imprisoned will cannot but continue. Let me look at it really quick. Sometimes when I read them out loud, I'm like, I said a lot of things, but I don't think I comprehended that. Okay. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. Okay, so maybe this is similar to what I was saying, where like in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden we just have correct perception and all of our judgments disappear. The process of right evaluation. It means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. Okay, so it'll almost like the veil disappears completely and we're able to see everything for exactly what it is. Like it's like the world of like illusion and sugar-coated poison. Like you can no longer fall into that. You can see poison for poison no matter how beautiful they try to make it. Like people just can't fool you anymore because you are viewing the world strictly through energy rather than through the appearances of physicality. And I like how it says punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness because it like offers this perspective that it almost like completely goes against the idea of hell, which I don't believe that like souls get damned to hell. I think hell is a mind state that you can put yourself in, but nobody is nobody deserves to spend eternity in hell. And I think this kind of clears that up to me. Um, I almost see this concept of why, because I've thought about this before of like, okay, so why do I think nobody deserves to go to hell? Like, there's really awful people on this planet doing awful, heinous things. Like, how do they not deserve to go to hell, right? And I'm not saying, like, from a human perspective, we should definitely morally stand up against these people and use our voice and use our willpower and our judgment and discernment and boundaries to physically hold these people back and stop them from what they're doing. That's just the right thing to do. But when you zoom out and you look at it from like a purely energetic standpoint, it's almost like the energy came first, right? And then the souls that physically incarnated came after the fact. So it was like there was an energy that needed to be played out. And before we all incarnated, our souls all decided, like, okay, well, I'll play that role and you can play this role. And you're going to be the victim and I'll be the perpetrator. And we're going to play these energies out. It's like we chose to come and play the role of victim and perpetrator before we ever incarnated. And that's not to say while we're here, we shouldn't use physicality to set boundaries and, show people that it's not okay to act that way. But just from a purely energetic standpoint, we decided to play these things out before we ever even entered into the physical realm because our souls are pure. On the other side of things, there's a purity to our soul that cannot be taken away. Um, yeah, I don't know. That was kind of also random. I'm going on random things today, but that's my
I love
idea of
it.
it all.
No, I love that because I would fully agree with you. So it's like, yeah, there are people on this planet who have done really terrible things, but then that goes back to like, are we even in control of that? Was that person who committed whatever, were they actually in control? And it can be hard to kind of grapple with that concept because it's like, we want to think that people have the ability to make better choices, ourselves included, but I don't really know that I don't know that we have, and morality, like there is the concept of like, like in a perfect world. I don't know why my throat is doing this. Hold on. But like in a perfect world, we wouldn't need to say, oh my gosh, why am I losing my voice? I'm gonna like mute and cough.
Yeah.
Hold
I'll
on,
let my,
mute.
I'll let my cat in while you're.
Okay, I don't know what's happening. What I'm trying to say is in a perfect world, that we wouldn't really need to have this like we wouldn't need to say like thou shalt not kill, like thou shalt not do like whatever the sins are. And ideally we would be coming into the world like knowing those things and being able to act on like our own moral compass. But just the fact that that kind of stuff is like that's out there, it just shows us that there is like this moralistic, we can like choose to have like these moralistic views, but morality is really like it's very thin, I feel like. Just, because I don't know. I don't think we're in control.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always thought about morality almost because, right, there are people who say that they're very moral, but they're almost moral to a fault. Like, I don't know if you ever watched, what's that? The Bad Place or The Good Place with Kristen Bell.
Oh, years and years ago.
But her counterpart, I can't remember his name. I can't remember it. I watched a while ago. He was like moral to a fault, where it was like hurting the people in his life. And then there are other people who almost go by like a cowboy code, to where like they're not moral like black and white. They're moral in gray areas where they stand by their own morals, their own code. They don't need ethics or philosophy to show them the way. They have a way within them that they choose to follow, even if nobody else understands it. Kind of,
Yeah, love that. Because
yeah.
that makes the most sense to me because it's like it's almost like if you have to say it, like then you're like almost giving the idea of it. I don't know. I don't know if I fully believe that because I don't agree with like, like sheltering children and not letting them have access to things. But I also don't agree with like the access that children have nowadays. So there is like that gray area. Because I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't know who the president was. Like, I didn't care about that kind of stuff. And it goes into that of like, I don't know, I've been watching Degrassi. It's like one of my favorites. I just love like high school shows. And they go into that concept of like if you're giving out condoms, then you're like telling kids that it's okay to have sex. And it's like it's not true, but there is like a very like minuscule truth to that, where it's like if we have these moral codes, and then the people that do get stuck in this like black and white thinking, then they can be like, okay, I'm gonna hold these morals so perfectly. But yeah, if there was like, if we did operate, and I wonder if that's kind of what this like last judgment thing is like if there is like that switch where we all operate from that, like, I guess like cowboy code, where we are like, okay, I have my own internal moral compass and I wouldn't even think to do some of these things because, there is like right and wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, because you're seeing from within rather than needing the external to show you what's good.
Yeah.
Because that's how we get lost in like the sugar wrapped poison, because we're relying on the external to tell us what we
Yeah.
should believe is good and what we should believe is bad, rather than tuning into our own internal guidance and choosing to see from ourselves, even if that means people don't understand you, or people think that you're a bad person, or people think that you're evil. It's like, whatever. Like, I know that I'm not. I don't need your approval to know that, right?
Yeah. And that goes back to last week where we were talking about, like that inner stability. You have your inner stability,
Yeah.
your inner like North Star, I guess.
Yeah. Because if you go back to like purely seeing the world through an energetic standpoint, then you can see that like when duality was created, the polar opposite of high vibration was created, and it started out as an energy. And maybe we tried to alchemize this energy and bring it up into a higher frequency without ever coming down into physicality, and we realized that we weren't successful with that. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. I don't know if this is true or not, so take it or leave it, but this is just what was running through my mind. And so that's why we chose to like, okay, well, maybe we should try like playing this out in like denser realms, because the objective was always to alchemize the denser energy back up to a higher state frequency. But maybe we found out along the way that the only way to truly do that was to densify and go down into like the lowest realm where this low dense energy existed. And we had to have souls that were willing to come down and play the role of Hitler, for instance, not because it was the morally right thing for him to exist from a human perspective, but because from a soul's perspective, that energy already existed. And we needed somebody who was willing to come down in physical form and embody that energy to bring it to the attention of the physical realm, so then we could work to alchemize it. But we could only alchemize it in density. So someone had to volunteer to come down and play that dark demonic energy in order for it to be alchemized to light. And that's why he wouldn't go to hell, because the energy already existed, and then his soul volunteered to play that role in order for it to be alchemized, you can't alchemize something that isn't physically tangible. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, totally. Because like, I mean, imagine the torment that a soul would experience being like one of the most hated people in existence, you know? So I agree with you. I don't believe that like his soul or whatever should be like damned to hell. I don't agree with that at all because the amount of torment that that soul would be experiencing for having to play that role, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as he died or whatever, like I'm sure there was like, you know, that reckoning of like, holy shit, that was really big, you know? And I don't know. I don't even know how I feel about like reincarnation or any of that, but like obviously us that soul would be under that guise, that soul would be reincarnated. So who knows what lives were experienced after that, or, you know. But that it really is like that's a big role. You know, think about like these like big people out on the world stage now. Like that's a really big role to be someone who is like hated so deeply. You know, I think the real privilege of existence is kind of being those ones that are we just live quiet lives and you know, we that's it.
That's
Because
so
that's a
true.
lot.
Yeah, that's so true. And I agree with you and with reincarnation. I've like gone back and forth. I think it because then it kind of goes along with karma. This is random too, but whatever. But karma, I don't know. Karma is like something we created. I don't think it's like a solid law. Like you have to experience karma because if your soul is pure and undiluted, why do you have to repay your sins? Like that's just kind of like another form of damnation to me, like believing that you're gonna get your karma. It's like, are they though? Like, especially if you believe in soul contracts, where it's like, yeah, but like maybe in the physical world that person like screwed you over, and so you think they deserve karma, but perhaps before y'all incarnated into this reality, you had a soul contract with them where you both kind of agreed, like, hey, I have low self-worth and I really need help alchemizing my low self-worth into empowerment, into self-realized power or whatever. So could you come in and play the role of someone who is like a narcissist and is abusing me and making me feel low self-worth? So I have something tangibly physical to work with in order to alchemize my low self-worth. And they're like, oh, yeah, dude, I love you so much. I'd love to come down and play op for you so that you have something tangible to alchemize with, you know? So in that from that perspective, that person doesn't have any karma for treating you that way because before you both incarnated, you made an agreement that they were going to be the physical opposition in order to help you alchemize something that your soul wanted to alchemize. So, in a way, they were doing it out of love and they were doing it to help you. So, why would they deserve karma unless they believed in karma, unless their physical body forgot about that agreement and felt so bad for treating you that way and believed that they needed to repay their sins, and then yeah, karma would be real, but only because their belief in it reinforced it.
I would fully agree with that because I mean the relationships that I've had, like I had a best friend who it was like just a total like what I would have considered, you know, back then as like a karmic entanglement. But now that I'm like away from it, I don't think that I don't really think that she was like in control of like whatever she did to me. I do like I can look at it now and see like obviously, two takes two to tango. I'm not absolving myself here, but it's like I do think that we both had like a role to play. And like when it was going on, I had all these thoughts of like, oh my gosh, she's a narcissist. Like, and I've like felt so victimized by this. And I think it's the more that you like pin people as a narcissist and then you're the victim, it's like just keeping you in victim mode because like who knows what her perspective was? She probably thought I was a narcissist. So it's like, so who's right here? It's like we're both playing a role and it was shitty, but it like I grew so much from that in terms of like what I will allow to happen in my life and like I don't know, like I wouldn't trade it. Like it was really hurtful and whatever, but I wouldn't trade that because like for me to be like, oh, that bitch is gonna get her karma, like it's not, but like that's just me being small-minded um and thinking that like I have control or like that I'm the better person or whatever. And it's like I don't think that she's going to like get karma for that. I think that she probably learned a lot in that relationship as well. And then she's going to, you know, learn from it. But yeah, I would agree with you. I don't think that we like do things that like keep us like attracting karma and being punished. I don't think that we take on punishments from past lives. I also have this theory that like I've had like past life experiences like maybe twice, but I also have to wonder how much of that is like because we live in our own lives, it's kind of hard for us to see outside of our own perspective. So how much of a past life experience is the brain just showing you like maybe a movie of something happening under like the same energetic exchange, just for you to kind of like take yourself outside of it and then process it in a different way. So like I had this past life experience once where like I was like a boy and who was my mom now was like my little sister and I ended up like dying or something and I was like I felt so bad that I left her behind. And like the way that it played out, it it helped me to see like why I was so protective over my mom, but it also helped me see like that she didn't need me to protect her. I don't know, I kind of like viewed her in a way as like emotionally immature and that I felt the need to like protect her feelings. And I don't know, like was it a past life or was it just like the imagination can show you a scene that will like help you to process it and then you can bring it back to like, oh, okay, I see why I'm looking at it this way now. Like I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't like, is it something that actually happened or is it just part of, I don't know.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And it makes me think of something that Dolores Cannon used to talk about was sometimes we have like exactly what you're talking about, implants in our character's subconscious mind, like the character that we're playing in this life, we've implanted in their subconscious mind false false reincarnations to help give them a blueprint for the life that they're leading now. And she talked about also how like some past lives are real, but a lot of them are like almost like downloaded onto your character's subconscious mind, and you didn't actually physically experience them. They're just there to help you navigate this lifetime, which I think is so fascinating. Almost like our mind is a computer.
Yeah. Because like when you come across like a movie or something and you just like the story just like hits you and it just totally changes your whole perspective on something, I kind of see it as that same thing of like we're just being given like a glimpse of a movie to
Mm.
help change the perspective. And so now I'm kind of like, I don't really care about the past life thing. I don't really like to like look back and I don't know. I think the more that we focus on those kind of things, the more we just stay stuck in this perpetual loop of like, oh, I'm never going to be healed. I'm never going to be healed. So it's like now, like just focus more on like what's in front of you. And if you're conscious about what's in front of you and like the movies that you watch and stuff like that, then if you're, you're guided to watch a movie, then that movie will have that very specific dialogue that can help you move through something in your life. And it doesn't need to be like, I want to do this whole experience and like go back and whatever. It can just be very simple, like right in front of you.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful perspective because it's just like total and absolute trust in the present moment.
Yeah.
Like, and absolute embodiment of the present moment as well. Because when you trust the present moment, you're able to embody it deeper, which means that you're then able to receive more of what is being gifted to you here now.
Yeah.
I love that.
Remember what number we're on.
I know. I'm like, let me see. I think um we're on paragraph one, two, three, on paragraph four.
Okay, and that's me, right?
Correct.
Okay. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. At this point, the mind can begin to look with love on its own creations because of their worthiness. At the same time, the mind will inevitably disown its miscreations, which without belief will no longer exist. Um, okay, so everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. And I think that goes into the whole like who are we to say what is good and what is bad because God is looking down and loves all of the creation, no matter what it is, no matter what's happening. And so it's just saying that when we get to that point, everyone will look upon it and have those fresh eyes of like, this is all good. There's nothing wrong here, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And I love its connection to the apocalypse too, because I think like whenever this starts to happen, which perhaps it's happening now, because a lot of people are perceiving this like very apocalyptic world taking place. And I think that's because we're stepping into this, where it says this process of separation in the constructive sense, which I maybe that's what we're going through now. And like when a lot of people talk about like the separation of the two worlds, while I don't know how I feel about the whole like where y'all are in 3D and we're in 5D. Like I don't really follow that thought group. Like we're all in this together. But I think what it's saying here, this is a process of separation in the constructive sense. I think that this is gonna like just make everything seem like so utterly starkly contrasted to where you will be able to tell without a shadow of doubt like what has been created from the ego and what has been created through God. And I think this is being revealed to us now, and that's why our world seems so chaotic. And there's a lot of like there's a lot of people having a really hard time right now. I mean, we all are. I'm having like a hard time, like just with it's chaotic. And I think that's because there's almost like this separation taking place that will ultimately lead to unification. And I maybe that's what it's talking about, where it has to point out to you what belief systems, what structures, what organizations are rooted in darkness so that you can, I don't know. This is something that I can feel energetically, but I'm having a hard time voicing it.
No, I know what you mean. And the whole like just even the idea that there are NPCs, like that whole thing of like there are like soulless people walking around. I'm sorry, but if everything in this world is like a mirror of itself, if you think someone is an NPC, there are literally the exact same amount of people looking at you as an NPC. Like, that's the only way that this place can work. I don't believe that like if I were to be looking at someone and be like, oh, that's low consciousness, like that, it just shows me my own low consciousness. And like, yeah, we can look out into the world and be like, oh, I see, these people living this different life than me. But there are levels. Like, think about how many people are like in the higher echelons than those of us who think we're awakened, who are looking at us like we're NPCs. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's just so crazy. It's just fuels this like the even more separation. And then there's like this elitist mentality. And it's like, no, we are all in this together.
Yeah. Yeah, that thought has always just been so weird to me. I've just never really understood it. Um, yeah, I just don't understand it. I agree with you. It's very weird that people think that way, and I it does definitely just reflect back to them their own like disembodiment that needs to be integrated.
Yeah, it even goes into like control systems. Like the more that we look at all of the control systems in the world as trying to control us and trying to suppress us, that just shows us the more that we are controlling and suppressing ourselves. It's like the these systems weren't built to control us. I think what happened is that these systems were built and then people end up in them and then there is like it just like shifts to where the responsibility gets put on the system. But it's like that's not what its main intention was. And just because the intention is different now than when it started, it's not like the system is at fault. It's the people, like when people hate like the church and whatever. But the church itself didn't like do anything. It's the people running it. And so you can't like hate a whole system of oppression when it's the individuals that are like handling it. But I don't know, the more you view yourself as suppressed by something, the more you're suppressed. So,
That's true. And then you have to, it's like these systems were created and we think that there's structures outside of us, but really they need to be deconstructed from within. Like, for example, like misogyny. We can scream from the rooftops about misogyny, but until we actually go within and deconstruct our own internalized misogyny, we're not doing anything. Like, um, Yeah, that's just something that I've been really like focusing on deconstructing within myself over the past couple of years. So that was just the first example I thought of, but all of these little organizations that are physically manifested, if you have a belief in them or if you have a hatred towards them, there's probably like a connection there, and it's something that needs to be deconstructed within you because the individual is what's keeping it alive.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an interesting topic because like if you look in the sphere of um whatever's going on in the world now, there's a lot of hate towards men and like white men right now. And it makes me wonder if like back, like 50 years ago, what if the narrative was just pushed that women were suppressed? What if that wasn't actually what was going on? What if that was just the narrative that was pushed? And when you go into that mentality of like, oh my God, I'm so suppressed, I'm a woman, you know, like obviously there are these things happening in the world. I'm not denying any of that. But when it comes down to like paying attention to what's going on in the narratives right now, like what are we going to see in the next 20 years when like people are hating themselves for like being a white man, like what do we see coming? I don't know, like what does that turn into? And so it's like, okay, if we can see what's happening now and what it could become, then we need to look at the past. And it's like, do we have like historical evidence, I guess, of like all of this like suppression happening and like Salem witch trials and whatever? But it's like, how much of that was just pushed so that women were like, oh, I'm suppressed, and who knows where it began? We don't know where it started, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but we just don't know. And that's why it comes back to the self. Like what are my views and like what am I experiencing?
Yeah, I think about that all the time, like literally all the time, because it's almost like I'm going to use COVID as an example. Um, like, yes, COVID absolutely exists now, but from my perspective, it was created through pushing a narrative. They literally created something out of thin air just by pushing the narrative. You need to be scared of this. You need to wear a mask. It's coming to your country. You're going to get sick and it's going to kill all the old people. And like all of these narratives that were coming at you from every freaking direction, everybody on the entire planet was consuming these narratives from every direction. And because of our collective consumption and belief in these narratives, we then, with our collective creative power, co-created the pandemic. Like, yeah, it exists now, but because we collectively chose to believe in it first.
Yeah, and I think about that too in terms of like all these people that are believing in like an end of the world situation. Like, y'all are gonna make the world end. Like, we need to not go there. And it doesn't mean ignore it. It like, it doesn't mean like, oh, I'm just not gonna think about that, so it's not gonna happen. It's not that. But it's like we need to understand our power and our collective power and what it is that we're co-creating with these narratives that are getting pushed. And I don't even think when you go to the very top of that, I don't even think that there's just like some dude that's like, I'm gonna push this narrative, it's an energy that exists and then it gets filtered in, and then these people who are like working in whatever, like the energy goes into them and then it comes out. And so it's like there's not really anyone to blame for it. It's just part of what has to happen for our evolution. So it's like if we didn't see that happen, we wouldn't really have the awareness to know what's possible. So in a sense, that is kind of like one of the greatest gifts that we've sorry, that threw me off. I don't know what that was. But it's kind of like one of the greatest gifts that we've been given. As crazy as it was, it's like that it helped us to see what we're capable of as like people and like what we're creating.
Yeah. And then it circles back around to the beginning, talking about like trying to get rid of judgment. Even just the judgment of believing, like believing in a narrative that's being given to you is a judgment. You're either saying, yes, that's true, or no, that's a lie. Both of those are a judgment. And so the way to take your power away from something and not send your creative power towards something like a pandemic to be created wouldn't be to be fearful of it or to be like a super militant with your thinking, like you better not even think about the word COVID. Don't think about any of these things, like because if you think about it, you're going to create it. It's actually our judgment around it, whether our judgment positively or negatively around it. It's our that solidifies it into reality. It's the fact that we had two opposing sides that felt so strongly about it, whether they believed in it and were getting the shots and getting and wearing the masks, or whether they were totally against it and they were like, oh, this is all the government, this is propaganda, we have to fight against. And it doesn't matter. Both then created it. It's just the neutral awareness of like, oh, this is a narrative being pushed towards me right now. Fascinating.
Hmm.
Like just absolutely no reaction to it whatsoever is what then dismantles its power,
Yeah. Yeah, I would fully agree with that.
which is like crazy. But it's just being able to not choose any side. Or if you
Hmm.
do choose a side, like not then attaching judgment to the fact that you see yourself inclined to choose a side, like seeing that you're like, oh, I'm totally for the vaccine, I'm for masks, but I don't want to give my power away to it. So now I have to not be for the vaccine or I have to not be for masks. That's not true. Now you just observe that your ego has that judgment to it. And then that also dismantles it and takes your power back.
Yeah. And one isn't better than the other. It's like
Yeah.
when you can um go into your center and say, what is it that I am going to do for me? What does my body need? And so it's like, there are going to be people that are going to want it and there's people that don't. But as long as you're in your center and like this is what's right for me, then that's what you can do. But I don't know. I never got COVID. I'm just gonna say, like, I never got it because, like, I haven't been sick at all, and it's because I don't care about, I can just see the narratives that are going on. It is what it is. I know people who've had it and whatever, but I never got sick because I just don't care that much. I'm not attached.
Yeah. So like, well, I see that happening in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I definitely back in 2020 fell for the whole like being against it. I was so against it. And I was like vocal about it, especially with my family, because my family was like very into, like they believed it, what which neither me or my family are right or wrong or good or bad, but they believed in it. They got all the vaccines. They wore a mask everywhere. They did the social distancing. And then I was just the total opposite. And I was always like instigating and starting fights with my family because I was like, can't you idiots see what's happening? And like looking back, I'm like, okay, that was definitely not the way to handle it. And I think if I could go back and give myself advice to it now, it would be to sit with the judgment that was arising. Why did I feel the need to judge my family so harshly and to be so loud about it? Like, and it was because I was scared of whatever power I thought was giving COVID power. Like, I was afraid of the shadow government or whatever. So they were afraid of COVID, and I was afraid of the shadow government. We were both giving power to the creation of the pandemic. Whereas if I could
Yeah.
just like observe that fear within myself and be like, wow, fascinating. Okay, I have a fear towards the shadow government and like really sit with myself and dismantle that fear from within, then that's when I was able to reclaim my power and be like, whatever. They don't have any control over my existence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that 2020 was like, I was like annoying about that kind of stuff before, but then as soon as 2020 happened, I was like, I am done. I am not playing these games anymore. Like that, I just stopped sharing myself online when 2020 happened. Like that's when I just like totally went dark. I was like, what is really going on here? And like it because I was like that before. I was like, being annoying about everything and like, I have more information. I know more than you. Like all of these agendas, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as like 2020 happened and then you just saw like one thing after the other, I was like, there's more going on here. So I'm just gonna like shut the hell up.
Yeah, that was smart. That was such a
Which was
crazy year.
I loved it. I feel like 2020 was like when I was in this whole I don't know, I was like in this like floaty phase of like, I'm so awakened. I don't care about any of it. I see like both sides. It's whatever. And I feel like I got to live in like this cognitive dissonance that year that was just so like, I don't care about anything. And I feel like that was like one of the best, like least stressful years of my life. And then it's like once 2021 came, I was like, okay, shit's getting real. Like I really have like shadows to face now.
Yeah, nice year of rest.
Hmm.
I love that. Okay, two, three, four. Okay, this is the last paragraph. The term last judgment is frightening, not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside down perception. If the meaning of the Last Judgment is objectively examined, it is quite, I'm having a hard time reading, sorry. It is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. You can, however, apply it meaningfully and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but dictate. The purpose of time is solely to give you time to achieve this judgment. It is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. Okay. Brightening out life. Okay, so the first part talking about how it's association with death and how this is an example of upside down perception, um, is just kind of, I guess, pointing to like our fear of death because like it's really just our ego that will die when we transcend death. And like the our truth lives on, our soul, whatever you want to call it, our soul, our truth, our higher self. Who cares what it's called? But that part of us can never die. It's really just our ego that is afraid of death, and our ego only exists in the upside down perception. Our ego only exists in the inverted matrix. So this idea of the last judgment to the ego really does mean death. Like the last judgment to our ego is death, but it's through that portal of fear that we transcend that fear, I suppose, because then we realize that we are not our ego. Okay. If the meaning of the last judgment is quite apparent, then it really is. Okay. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life, the doorway to true life, kind of like the portal. I was just saying, like it's our final portal through death into the transcendence of our ego, which is the doorway to true life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. I don't fully understand that, so I guess like the final judgment is toward God, but I don't understand what that judgment would be. I guess I don't need to understand it right now. Let the right. Yeah, I don't know. The rest of this paragraph, this was kind of a hard paragraph for me. Do you have any thoughts?
I think the beginning, how it says the term last judgment is frightening, not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. I think that's why people think that the apocalypse is like where we all die or whatever. I mean, I don't even know what the narrative of that is. Um, but I think this is saying that people are associating it with like this only happens, the last judgment only happens when you die, but I don't think that that's like we don't have to die for that. We can have like ego death or whatever. But I was just talking to my mom. So my mom is Mormon and I was talking to her about like they have like their own like afterlife prophecy, I guess, where like once like something happens, I mean, I don't even know the story, but something happens, then there's like the end, and then you get like your perfected form. I don't even know. But I was telling her, like, what if we just need to look at that differently? You know, what if we don't need to die for that to happen? And she was like, well, that's what happens with the millennium and the second coming and like all this stuff. I'm like, but what if we looked at it as like this is something that can happen while we're still alive? Like, what if? And I kind of think that's like what this is saying is that um we don't have to die for this to happen. And I also I don't know what I believe in terms of like the second coming or like any of that. I don't even know what I believe because, you know, I'm only going to believe what is like directly given to me from like, you know, my own intuition. So I don't know where I was going with this, but I think it's like it just comes down to our perceptions and our interpretations because a lot of these prophecies and things that are being handed down through generations, they're also handed down with like the way that you're supposed to perceive it. And I think that the biggest message here in this time is like the more we know, the more like differing perceptions we can have. And I think we're really understanding, and you talk about this as well, of like bringing heaven to earth. It's not like we're not gonna like die and go back to heaven and whatever. It's like the perception that we're working on changing now is that we can actually like bring heaven to earth, and it can be like pretty fantastical actually. I believe that, like if we've seen like the growth of consciousness from, just the last 20 years to now, like so much more could be possible. And I believe that, the perfected form and all of that, I think that we're going to be able to have the conscious ability to like turn on and off certain gene expression because like why wouldn't we? The consciousness is expanding and we've seen like pretty crazy things happen in the world in terms of like energy healing and any of that stuff. And so I don't know. I think this is all like if we if we are creating whatever narratives are floating around, like why wouldn't we choose a narrative that like benefits all of us? Because if we can do that, if we can be conscious about that, then why don't we just consciously choose a narrative where we all benefit and we all have this last judgment? And yeah.
Yeah. It almost reminds me of like when you hear stories about when someone becomes an ascended master, it's never like that they die and go to heaven. It's like they physically ascend through consciousness and their physical body. Like they consciously choose to just step out of their body into another form. And they never actually go through the process of death. They just step out of their body and there they are, just as like a more holographic, lighter looking version of themselves. And for a long time, I was like so into like figuring out, like I was like, I'm gonna figure out how to do this, trying to use my mind, a little ego trick, trying to use my mind to ascend. And I got trapped there for such a long time. And I was like, well, I'll just be a vegan and I'll just stop eating caffeine and I'll just meditate every day and I'll just do this, like trying to control it. And I think 2 years ago was when I surrendered to all of that. I was like, okay, I have no fucking clue what I'm doing. Like, why don't I just let my soul guide the way? And this past couple of weeks, I've been just randomly saying this mantra. I don't know where it came from. I've just been randomly saying, I am open to being completely wrong about everything I think I know. I am open to reality shifting before my very eyes. I am open to receiving major miraculous shifts in perception. And I've just been saying that, like, if not every day, every other day, randomly. I'll be like driving to the gym and I'll just like randomly say that. I'm like, that was weird. But it's like shifting me. It's like totally shifting me out of my mind and deeper into embodiment, into like my body, therefore into my senses, which I think our physical senses are somehow like a portal through to our supernatural senses. Like I know that people like, I don't know, maybe Buddha said that to like your senses are lying to you or whatever, which sure, perhaps they are because this physical reality is an illusion. But I think we have to descend down into and experience our physical senses in order to reach the portal of supernatural sensory abilities. I don't know. Like, of course, I'm mentalizing it, but I'm trying my best to release any and all judgments and concepts that I think I believe and just like receive them as energetically as possible without attaching myself to them.
I would fully agree with that because even if you look at like even if you know anything about like biology, and the way that evolution works, and you just look at the state of the world, it's like infertility is like one of the biggest things going on right now. And so like what does that tell you in terms of evolution? Um, Anything that is biological, like all of us that are living, we have these like mechanisms within us that want to keep us alive. That's the whole point. And so like I'm not having kids, and so I wonder about this like my lineage ends with me. And so what does that like what is my biology computing in terms of like knowing that I will not be reproducing, that the line ends here, you know? So I feel like there has to be some sort of evolution that would be taking place in like not just me, but like everyone, because like this is just what we see is that the infertility is at an all-time high. So it's not like the human race would just cease to exist. It would have to evolve. It would have to evolve to meet the new criteria, the new conditions or whatever. And I think that it's part of it. It is part of like, okay, this is happening. It's not cause and effect. It's like they create each other. And so for this evolution to happen, for us to bring heaven to earth, for us to like live in perfected forms or whatever the theories and whatever are, it's like we are dealing in terms of biology and it is far more intelligent than we are. And our senses are a very big part of that. So the more that we can come in tune with our senses and understand, and not really understand because that's like mental, but feel into like how is my biology like wanting to express now in this time and place where evolution is happening. And it does come back to our senses. And there are like the ego, I guess you could put like the seven deadly sins into that, where there's like the ego desires or like lower desires, dealing with the senses. But I think that once you like really get a handle on those, that's where the evolution happens. When you're no longer like, oh, I need to like binge eat this entire ice cream to make myself feel better. It's like once you work through all of that, that's where the senses open up to the supernatural.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if it's because when we're moving through these habitual things, which like that used to be something I did every night, like back in 20, I don't know, 2016, 2017, I would work and then I would go to a gas station and I would buy one of those small Ben and Jerry's and I would eat the whole thing. Every single night. I ate an entire freaking, I mean, it wasn't the whole tub, but like one of the little ones. Every night I would eat a whole one of those. And there was definitely like an underlying energy there that I was playing out rather than feeling through in my body. And so I wonder if it's like through those through those habitual things, we're like tying ourselves to the lower realm, the false world, the inverted matrix. And so we can't really scope out and experience more of what there is. We can only experience what we are connecting ourselves through our actions and words and habits. Whereas whenever we learn to like dissolve those things by dissolving the energy that is animating them, we open ourselves up to more possibilities. Is this kind of what you were saying?
Yeah. Yeah, so if we're in the habit of pacifying every time we have an uncomfortable feeling, and a pacifier could be the ice cream, or it could be cigarettes, or it could be drinking or coffee, or like any of the things that we do on a daily basis. It's like every time we have like the stress response, we are going to do these things to pacify. But the more we pacify, the less we're dealing with the situation at hand. And so it's like when we learn what it is that we're actually trying to pacify and we work through it, then those like instincts, is it an instinct? I don't even know if it's an instinct, more like maybe like a reflex, then those reflexes transform. And then we're no longer like so focused on like these emotional reflexes, and then that opens our senses up to more. I think that's why people do like fasting, like water fasts and stuff like that, because you learn to that like hunger in itself is kind of like a mental like urge, so it's like when you work through all of that, then I think that's what opens you up to like the more being able to sense more outside of like I want something sweet, or I'm hungry for this, or like I need caffeine, or like a cig.
Mhm. That's so true. Yeah. I'm like processing it, but I forgot what we were talking about. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Let me go back to the lessons.
Well, we made it through chapter 2.
We did it! Man, before I started this journey of doing these um, study groups, I was like, oh yeah, I'll probably like, maybe we'll read like one chapter a session. I was like, how many chapters are there? We can get through it in whatever, however many. Now I'm just like, okay, no. It's so juicy. There's so much to talk about.
hmm
I love it. Okay, we're on lesson 8. So for those of y'all following along on the replay, we're on lesson 8, which I think if you go back, if you're on the online version, if you go back to the main menu, I think there's like a button that you can push that says workbook for students. And that's where we're at.
Yeah.
Okay, lesson 8. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. This idea is, of course, the reason why you only see the past. No one really sees anything. He sees only his thoughts projected outward. The mind's preoccupation with the past is the cause of the misconception about time from which you're seeing. Wait. The mind's preoccupation with the past is the cause of the misconception about time from which your seeing suffers. Your mind cannot grasp the present, which is the only time there is. It therefore cannot understand time and cannot, in fact, understand anything. The one wholly true thought one can hold about the past is that it is not here. To think about it at all is therefore to think about illusions. Very few have realized what is actually entailed in picturing the past or anticipating the future. The mind is actually blank when it does this because it is not really thinking about anything. The purpose of this exercise for today is to begin to train your mind to recognize when it is not really thinking at all. While thoughtless ideas preoccupy your mind, the truth is blocked. Recognizing that your mind has been merely blank rather than believing that it is filled with real ideas is the first step to opening the way to vision. The exercises for today should be done with eyes closed. This is because you actually cannot see anything, and it is easier to recognize that no matter how vividly you may picture a thought, you are not seeing anything. With as little investment as possible, search your mind for the usual minute or so, merely noting the thoughts you find there. Name each one by the central figure or theme it contains and pass on to the next. Introduce the practice period by saying, I seem to be thinking about blank. Then name each of your thoughts specifically. For example, I seem to be thinking about name of a person, about name of an object, about name of an emotion, and so on, concluding at the end of the mind searching period with, but my mind is preoccupied with past thoughts. This can be done 4 or 5 times during the day unless you find it irritates you. If you find it trying, 3 or 4 times is sufficient. You might find it helpful, however, to include your irritation or any emotion that the idea for today may induce in the mind searching itself. Man, that was a long. Um, I think this is really just another aspect of practicing mindfulness, practicing being the observer, just sitting like, oh, I am aware of anxious thoughts, that kind of thing. I am aware of this sensation on my body, but more specific to just thoughts, I suppose. But I kind of like it. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I think it's great. I think it works right into that, like, why am I eating this ice cream? Why am I
Yes.
smoking this cigarette?
Yes. And really, this has been something I'm like diving so deeply into right now are all of my little habits like that been know I've known I've been doing. Like I've known about them and I've just kind of let them run on with the idea of like, oh, non-attachment, non-judgment, just let it be, forgive yourself and move forward. And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm actually forgiving myself and not judging myself and not attaching myself to these actions, to these habits, then they wouldn't be so loud. They wouldn't be so pervasive in my daily life. And it's been something that I've been really working with for like heavily for like 6 months now. And I'm like, okay, I've done the whole I'm not judging myself thing. And if I was actually not judging myself, it would have fallen away by now. It wouldn't have stuck around for like 6 more months. Or maybe it would have, and that's another judgment that I'm placing on it. Um, but it really is like learning to be with the discomfort that's arising in the moment rather than falling into like an old cycle is challenging. And I think something I've learned, which is fairly new, I'm like moving through it currently, is like not to be so passive. I was like over spiritualizing it and being super passive and like, oh, it doesn't matter. Just have another cup of coffee. Who cares? Have 5 cups of coffee. It doesn't matter. And I was just like being overly passive and overly spiritual about it. And it's like, okay, but I'm not actually getting to the root of like what's going on here. I'm just kind of letting myself act out in ways that are not in alignment because I'm actually just avoiding the issue and pretending to be all loving and forgiving of the issue. So I have been connecting it with will, like invoking my willpower to not give in to the cycle. Like actually doesn't have to be stemmed in judgment. And I think that's what I struggled with for so long is because I used to like force myself to not do things with my willpower. Like I used my willpower in a very judgmental, toxic way. And so I think I had to go to the extreme opposite of it for a little while, where I was just like super passive and like, oh, well, I had this like negative connotation around willpower. And I was like, well, whatever, you don't want to force yourself into anything. So just let yourself do whatever you want and forgive it, and it's fine. And I'm like coming to the point now where I'm like, no, like this is getting ridiculous, April. Use your willpower from a non-judgmental place and choose to actively sit with the energy behind the cycle. Like face yourself, you know? So that was random. Well, not really. We were just talking about that. Yeah.
Well, I would fully agree with that because the kind of like last week I was saying like I like where do you draw the line? You know, where do you draw the line between like the active and the passive? But you can't really get to that point of like knowing where the line is until you go like so far out and so far the other way. Because yeah, I've had to definitely go through that too, especially with drinking coffee. Like I don't know why. I don't know. Because you see so many people online, they're like, oh, don't drink caffeine. It's so bad for your nervous system and whatever. And I'm like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. I don't care. And then like whenever I do drink too much coffee, then I'm like, why did I do this to myself? Like I'm not immune to this. But it is like that you do have to like toe the line on both sides and really find that centerpiece. Because I have totally found myself in that in the passivity too of like, oh, it is what it is. I'm just doing it and I love and accept myself. And then it's really, like really. So yeah.
Yes, that's like where I'm at. I'm like, real, like, do you really? Are you really not judging yourself here? Or are you just suppressing the part of you that is judging yourself and inflating this like false persona of forgiveness so that you can keep doing whatever you want and feel good about it?
Mhm. Yeah, I don't really know. I don't know if we ever like reach a point of like not like I'm starting to believe that this is just going to be like a lifelong, like going really far one way, really far the other. Like I think I'm just going to be doing this forever. And that's fine. I think people that are extreme end up learning more than people who aren't, because we kind of do take things a little bit too far. But I guess that's fun in itself.
Yeah. But I mean, what if the lesson is just fully surrendering and immersing yourself into the human experience, the human condition, and just learning how to just allow it
Yeah.
in a sense? Like, what if that is also the, see, this is why I can convince myself to just keep like, what if that is the lesson?
I do the same thing.
It's like over mentalizing it. This is really truly why I'm just trying to detach from all stories and concepts and drop into my body, because I could sit here and convince myself on both sides.
hmm Yeah, same.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's why I'm like, okay, I'm doing my best to detach from both of those stories and just descend into embodiment. And whatever naturally flows in that space is going to be what I need to see, hear, do, and experience.
Yeah, I kind of have a hard time with that one too, because when you get in the habit of watching your mind, it's like sometimes something will come into my mind and then I'm like, is this what I need to be thinking about for the next 24 hours? And then I'll go on this like total rabbit hole of this thing. And then it's like, wait, like just because something comes into your mind or comes into your awareness does not mean you need to engage with it. So. I don't know, it's always going to be like a battle, I feel like, but which I don't want it to be a battle because I think the whole point is like, dropping the battle. But I think that as humans, I think we really just enjoy I think we love it. And I think that that's part of like what we're supposed to be learning here is like choosing our battles.
Hmm.
Because like if we're not fighting anything, like I just don't like what would we do? I think we'd be bored.
Yeah. It's almost like we're addicted to the strife. Let me see if my and actually, is my sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Now you're back. Um, oh wow, I guess we've been on a while, but I which is fine. But I had one more thing that what you just said, like being addicted to that. My husband was just telling me about this study that was done with rats where they took these rats and put them in, they went from being like lab rats where they were kind of mistreated, and this guy built this like mouse oasis for them where they had everything that they needed. They had copious amount of food, water, comfortable places to lounge and live, and they had little exercise wheels if they wanted to exercise. And he put like 30 mice in there to see what would happen. And the first generation just totally like existed peacefully and were like, oh, this is like a breath of fresh air compared to being a lab rat. And they also then their population grew exponentially because they had nothing better to do but to grow their population. And then it was the second generation started like the female mice started to get more choosy with like what male mouse they were going to reproduce with. They would only pick like the biggest, like I don't know, the whatever the female mice thought was attractive in the man mices, but they would be more picky and choosy with what mice that they slept with to the point where these mice, the males, started forming gangs and like going around and like physically assaulting and raping these female mice. And by the third generation, the half of the male population had become homosexual and they were just sleeping with each other. And
What the hell?
I might have, he explained it so much more eloquently than I did, but the premise of the study, and he did it eventually with like, he spent 25 years on this study and he did it with five different groups of mice, and the same thing happened every single time. And his conclusion was like, left to their own devices, when you take away any like external issues, they create their own. Like now they're like forming gangs and there's violence and there's like, it's wild to me. And it kind of,
That is crazy.
yeah, it's weird.
Like
Like,
psychologically, I think that we do that. I think, we live in a world now where we have so many options for everything. And because, everything is just so available, it's like we have a hard time like I guess being okay with it, you know? Like we do get these like addictions to like suffering. I don't know. I can tell that I totally have like an addiction to being overwhelmed and it's really annoying. And like that just proves it.
yeah, it's almost like the ego is just attempting ferociously to keep itself alive.
Hmm.
And I was talking to him about how like those plates where you like set it to a certain vibration with sand on it and then they vibrate to like a specific picture.
Hmm.
So I was thinking about that and how the animal kingdom is simply just like a vibrational reflection of our collective human frequency. Like, because our human frequency emits this vibration and then our physical reality has to reflect it. So I wonder if like the only reason that the mice in this study acted that way was because of the vibrational frequency humanity was at that time.
Ooh, I love that angle.
Like I wonder if like we ever get to a place where there's harmony and balance and peace and someone did that study again, if it would shift.
That makes so much sense because we really are like the ones that put out that frequency. Like, I'm not going to say that humans are like, we're like the most evolved and nothing is more intelligent than us, but in the grand scheme of things, the the human frequency is like the one that sets the tone for like everything because we are the ones that are like the mirrors of the whole. So that is so interesting. Like
Yeah.
that's definitely a really cool way to look at it.
Yeah, that's what I was. Now I'm just curious. I'm like, well, now I hope I live long enough to see if harmony ever emerges on the planet so I can convince someone to do this study again.
No, that's what I was telling my mom the other day. I was like, I mean, I hope that I can live long enough to get to a point where we have all of these things happening because I don't want to sound like crazy or fantastical, but I really do think that it's possible that we could like reach a point of immortality. Like, I mean, I am quite a
Why not?
dreamer, but like I think it's possible. I don't know if it's like
I
the
do
next
too.
20 years, but we could, like, it could be in our lifetimes. Or what if we could, like, extend our lifetimes because we are conscious of what is going on and we're conscious of, like, cycles and things. So,
Yeah, I believe in that too. And I also thinking about that, it makes me think that, that part in the Bible where it says like the lion will lay with the lamb? That's kind of what it makes me think of as like, I don't know the context behind that whole verse or story or whatever. I only literally know that one phrase, the lion will lay with the lamb. It just makes me think of this like our vibration collectively will raise to such heights that nature will reflect that back to us and like there will no longer be need for the lion to kill the lamb to survive. They will just be sovereign and complete on their own because they'll reflect that from humanity. And so they'll be like little friends instead of
yeah,
instead of enemies.
that really, it does make a lot of sense because there are theories out there, like, I don't know if you've gotten into like the old world like Tartarian stuff. I don't know what I believe about that, but just from my perspective and like ignoring other people's opinions about it, a lot of these older buildings, like they didn't have bathrooms in them, and that to me is like extremely significant because it like the being alive and like using a bathroom, it's like one of our main instincts. And I just don't believe that these like extreme builders like didn't think about bathrooms, like they were conscious enough to do these amazing buildings and whatever. There just wouldn't be any reason for them to be like, oh, we're not gonna have bathrooms here, but so I think that there were like past civilizations. And I think that they were probably conscious enough that they didn't actually have to like use the bathroom. And that would be like, that would only be possible if they were at a level of consciousness to where they wouldn't need to be consuming to be alive. And
Hmm.
so if we do reach a level, and then like the lion wouldn't need to consume something to be alive, then why wouldn't they just like chill together?
Yeah. Yeah. And that also makes me think of like immaculate conception. Like,
Yeah.
I really believe that Mother Mary was an ascended master in her own right. And I believe that she trained for decades in like mystery schools and learned how to have an immaculate conception. I really don't think it was something that like God just did to her and she's the Virgin Mary, whatever. Like I think that she trained for decades to learn how to wield her energy in such a way to produce an immaculate conception. And so if that's possible through her, then like what you're saying in these ancient civilizations, perhaps that's also how they reproduced. So they had like no need for genitals at all. They didn't have to go to the bathroom, and they also didn't have to procreate in that way because they were sovereign divine beings. They could just immaculately conceive a life form within their womb.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And my perspective is that if something has been possible, then it is always going to be possible. Like the possibility doesn't just disappear. And, even like, even if that is a hoax, even if that didn't happen, the perception of it being a possibility, I believe is enough for consciousness to make it happen. So I fully agree with that. I do think, hopefully in our lifetimes we can reach a point where it's like immaculate conception is a thing, especially in terms of like what's going on with fertility right now. Like that just tells me that there is like a single pointed focus on something that needs to evolve. So what if, like this fertility epidemic is because like we are going to be able to evolve to get to a point where we can do that.
Yeah, that's true. Because it's almost like the like level of darkness that that brings, like fertility issues bring such an intense level of darkness that like if alchemized can transform into anything, can transform
Yeah,
into something like that, which would be awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. Things to a lot to integrate for sure.
this is a very interesting conversation. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, this was fun. This was a good conversation.
Yeah, like to dig into this kind of stuff. I think
Me
it's really
too.
interesting.
Yeah. I could literally sit here and talk about it for hours. But yeah, I should probably get going just to do my little evening routine. But I had a really great conversation.
Yeah, this was fun. So thank you so much, and I'll see you
Yes.
next week.
Yes, I'll see you next week. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Let's see.